Did you know there's a whole world that bugs can see but we can't? Many insects can see in ultraviolet light. It's one way bees and butterflies identify nectar in plants. We may not need it for collecting sugary flower juice, but it might be helpful if we could see in ultraviolet because it does have an effect on us.
What is UV?
Ultraviolet light, or UV for short, is a type of radiation. Now, we're all very familiar with some types of radiation. The light that we can see all around us, visible light, for example, is a type of radiation. Or X-rays, that's another type, which, like UV, you can't see. And just like X-rays, UV can also be pretty dangerous if we get too much of it. UV comes from very high temperature surfaces, such as the sun. So it's naturally present in sunlight, and that's how most of us get exposed to it. Fortunately, the Earth's atmosphere is pretty good at shielding us from the worst effects of UV. Heard of the ozone layer? That is particularly good at taking out UV radiation and stopping too much of it getting to us. The ozone layer is a natural part of the Earth's atmosphere that sits around 20 to 30 kilometers up in the sky. Its thickness varies around the globe and it changes with time too, so some parts of the Earth get more UV coming through than others. How much ozone there is above your head is one of the 3 key factors that determine how much UV you are exposed to on any one day. The other 2, well, firstly, how much cloud or dust or pollutants there are in the sky, and secondly, well, actually just how much sky there is between you and the sun. Yes, the sun angle is crucial. We weather presenters often talk about the strength of the sun and how it varies day on day or hour by hour, but overall the sun remains pretty constant, certainly in terms of how much UV it's pumping out. Ultraviolet rays are still streaming out of it at 2 o'clock in the morning, but we don't need to put sun cream on if we're out in the middle of the night. It would perhaps make more sense if we were to talk about the strength of the atmosphere, i.e. how powerful the gases are in the sky at shielding us from those most damaging rays. Now, in winter, the sun is lower in the sky than in the summer months. This means that there's more of the Earth's atmosphere to go through, so fewer of the harmful rays can get to you. This is why we are more concerned about UV levels in the summer than in the winter. Let me try and demonstrate. If we've got the world here and our atmosphere is all around it, and the sun is, say, over here. Now, it is spewing out those UV rays, but the atmosphere is helping to shield us from the very worst. Now, if you think about where you are in the world, that is going to make a difference to how much atmosphere those rays are going through. If you're here on the equator, then that distance there is shorter than that distance there. So if you're on the latitude where the UK is, there's more atmosphere to go through. So you're a bit more protected at latitudes where the UK is than compared to the equator, for example. So that's one way that UV varies. That's around the world. But we also vary things with the seasons because the Earth is tilted at 23.4 degrees. That's why we have seasons. So if we tilt the Earth, then basically the sun is up here in the summer months, and effectively the Earth would be tilted more away, so it would be down here in the winter months. Now, in both instances, the sun is still spewing out ultraviolet rays. But now, again, there's a big difference between, if you're on this latitude here, the amount of atmosphere those rays have got to get through, that length is much shorter than that length. So again, in the summer, when the sun's here, there is less atmosphere to go through compared to the winter months. So that is why UV levels are higher in the summer than in the winter. So if that's how the UV levels vary through the year, but they also vary every day and almost every hour through every day as well. And that's because of the position of the sun in the sky. If you think about it now, say we're positioned here, then at the middle of the day, the sun is directly above you, up here. But at the end of the day, the sun is over here. Now again, we have the Earth's atmosphere protecting us all around the globe. And now, if you think about it, at midday, there's only this much atmosphere to go through, whereas at the end of the day, there's much more of that atmosphere for it to go through. So again, that is why those peak hours between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m., that's when UV levels are at the highest, because there is less atmosphere to filter out those damaging rays. So UV levels do vary day on day, but they also follow this yearly cycle. I've got a graph to show that yearly cycle of how UV levels peak at around 7 or 8 in southern parts of the UK. This would be on a sunny day. But notice the peak is middle to the end part of June. The sun is at its strongest nearest the summer solstice, the longest day. That is when the sun is highest in the sky, so the least amount of atmosphere for those damaging UV rays to get through, to get to the Earth's surface and to our skin. Now, it's a common misconception that the hotter it is, the more likely you are to burn. But UV and temperature are not directly linked. Temperatures obviously go up in the summer months, and I can show you the peak of those temperatures through the year and how they vary. So this is the average UK maximum temperature over a 30-year span. Dates again going along the bottom. Now, the peak of the temperatures in the UK is generally late July to early August. That's when the peak is. And if we can compare those two graphs, you can see that the UV peak is shifted earlier in the year. It can easily be just 19 Celsius at 1 o'clock on June the 21st, but you damage your skin much faster than if it were, say, 27 Celsius at 4 p.m. on a weekend in late August, just because of the fact that that sun angle is much lower.
How do we rate UV?
We measure UV using the ultraviolet index. 1 on the index is very low, while 10 is very high. Now, it can go higher than 10, and in fact regularly does around the Mediterranean in the summer months. Anything above 10 is considered extreme.
When should you worry about UV?
Well, you should look to protect your skin if UV levels are at 3 or above. But people with lighter skin tones may need to apply sunscreen at even lower UV values. Remember, the strength of the sun is mostly determined by its place in the sky. So in the UK, UV is at its strongest between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. and, as mentioned earlier, peaking around the 21st of June, the summer solstice. But really, at any time the sun is out from March to October, it can cause damage. And even in winter, UV rays can still be harmful because other factors can still have an effect. For example, you can get sunburn if you are skiing. At altitude, there's less atmosphere to filter those UV rays, plus snow reflects around 85% of the sun's UV rays, so that can cause sunburn to areas that don't usually see much sun, like the underside of your chin or behind the ears. Being on a beach can have a similar effect, with the rays reflecting more off the sand and the sea, increasing the threat of sunburn. Here's another stat you may not know. Up to 80% of the sun's rays can still get through a thin layer of cloud. So even if it's cloudy, it's important to protect your skin, especially at those peak UV times. And then there's that invisible ozone layer that varies day to day, and so does its effectiveness as a filter. So it's never possible to tell how strong the UV is going to be just by looking out of the window. What does all this mean? Well, it means it's really important for you to keep up to date with the UV forecast, whatever the time of year.
UV and health.
Now, a small amount of UV radiation is essential for the production of vitamin D that our bodies need. However, too much exposure to the sun can have serious effects on your skin. So, how do you protect yourself? Well, the simplest thing to do is to seek shade when the sun is at its strongest, between those peak hours of 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. When your skin is covered, it's better protected too, so wearing tightly woven but loose-fitting clothes will provide more cover. And it's also a good idea to wear a wide-brimmed hat to protect your face and your head. We all know that one of the best ways to protect your skin from UV is by regularly applying a generous amount of high-quality, high-factor sun cream. All sun cream has an SPF number. It stands for Sun Protection Factor. It's all about how good that cream is at reducing the damaging effects of the UV. So, say your skin burns in 5 minutes unprotected. Then by applying an SPF 30, it would burn 30 times slower, so in 2.5 hours rather than that 5 minutes. It's really important though to maintain levels of protection and to reapply sun cream at least every 2 hours, or more often, say if you've been swimming or doing exercise, because that pool water or sweat can cause it to rub off.
Protecting your eyes.
One further damaging effect UV radiation has that is maybe less obvious is both short and long-term effects on the condition of your eyes. UV radiation from the sun or sunbeds can damage the eye's surface tissues as well as the cornea and lens inside. To protect your eyes from UV exposure, it's really important to wear good quality UV protective sunglasses. Wraparound shades offer the best protection, while grey lenses give a proper colour recognition.
To sum up,
you can find out what the UV levels will be in your area by using Met Office forecasts, which are available on our website and our app, and by following us on social media. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully you feel armed with the knowledge to enjoy yourself outdoors safely this spring and summer. Make sure you subscribe so you can see more of our evergreen videos. Coming up soon, we'll have an explainer all around pollen for you hay fever sufferers. And if you enjoyed watching this one, you may be interested in finding out a bit more about what these squiggles on a weather chart actually mean by giving my explainer on how to read a synoptic weather chart a watch.